I got it. Put in the power to this other one. Hold on. Right. Let's see here. It's all set up here. Just what gives people a chance to get in and stuff. Hope everyone's doing well and having a good morning, noon, night, wherever you are. This really needs to be out there. I'd be going back and forth on some of these videos going back because how the queue is on here. The queue. YouTube has that messed up. So this one, I mean, this stuff is not being taught in schools. The real history of slavery and everything, and it pisses me off because kids are in schools for these past decades have been taught a bunch of lies about slavery, black slavery, and this stuff, all these things, and they're just putting in one side how whites, enslaved blacks, and they don't talk about how blacks enslaved blacks and stuff like that, and how much of it is just total bullshit and everything. And I think we need to stop the bullshit of the hate that's being taught in schools, universities, and colleges, etc., because they are creating racism and stuff. And I want to go over these different videos. Hopefully I'll get them all correct. Hopefully I will. But let's get to this one first. Let's get it.
And just put this on. It's right behind you.
This is from Officer Tatum. I picked him because he's good at going over this stuff here. So shout out to Officer Tatum and stuff. He did a good job. Gonna have to leave him a like and stuff. I mean, of course, there's always some stuff that being able to agree and disagree on, but he did a great job on this video. I'd be going as a reacting over this stuff and everything. It's just too important not to say anything, and I'm tired of shutting my mouth about it. So, anyways, this has been happening for years now. Let's go.
There's nothing this parliament can do. With or without you, people are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one.
This gentleman and these Democrat dummies continuously say there is no genocide. There's nothing wrong with white people. Ain't doing it. Ain't happening. It don't exist. Donald Trump a racist. He just let the white people. All right. Donald Trump brought receipts. Somebody get your notebook ready, cause he finna throw the receipts down. Did you see Angel Studios' record-breaking animation film King of Kings over Easter? If you love that, get ready. Angel's next big hit. I would argue that he was unprepared. With all these naysayers on television, on seeing the South African president, he decided to come to the White House, and I would argue that he was unprepared. With all these naysayers on television, on CNN, MSDNC, MS, whatever you want to call it, these people who are literally, they should probably rot somewhere for how disingenuous and evil that they are, or evil they are, propagating hatred and division amongst the people. They are literally ruining this country because they continuously lie and deceive the public. Now, thank God we have President Trump. Thank God we have people like me and others who are committed to showing you what the truth is instead of letting you just get thrown off a cliff. So this gentleman and these Democrat dummies continuously say there is no genocide. There's nothing wrong with white people. Ain't doing it. It ain't happening. It don't exist. Donald Trump a racist. He just let the white people. All right. Donald Trump brought receipts. Somebody get your notebook ready, because he finna throw the receipts down.
This is what.
Roll the clip.
Turn the lights down.
Turn
Turn the lights down and just put this on. It's right behind you. Johan.
There's nothing this parliament can do with or without you.
I mean, the thing is, the gaslighting needs to stop from the South African president and these people. The gaslighting, the lying, say that we've been lying about this. We know this about this stuff for years happening.
People are going to occupy land. We require no permission from you, from the president, from no one. We don't care. We can do whatever you want to do. Who are you to tell us whether we can occupy land or not? We are going to occupy land. South Africa occupy land. That's who we are. So whatever you want to do, can we drop my membership from this useless parliament? Yes, honorable member. Must never be scared to kill. A revolution demands that at some point there must be killing, because the killing is part of a revolutionary act. Shoot to kill. Namaza. Kill the poor, the farmer. Kill the poor, the farmer.
Again, this is South Africa, and this racism is happening in the EU, it's happening in the UK, it's happening here, and what's happening in the UK with native white people and in Europe, how Islamic extremists and migrants are attacking white people, committing rapes and murders, and a lot of them are getting away with it over there. And if you say something against it, like in the UK, you could be in prison up to 14, 15 years. Even if you protest against it. In the UK, they have very bad anti-freedom of speech. If I go to the UK, I'd be arrested probably. So I can't go there because of, what I'm saying against Keir Starmer and the stupid government in the UK. This is happening lots of places around the world to white people. It's just not getting reported. If you go to Twitter, you can look up stuff on the UK about migrants and Islamic extremists taking over parts of the UK and EU and really committing crimes against white people, etc. And they want to have an Islamic caliphate there and everything else. So everything is connected here.
The man of DJ in PE is a white man. So these people, when you want to hit them hard, go after a white man. They feel a terrible pain because you have touched a white man. Not because Mashaba and Suri will not be touched. They will be touched, no one. But we are starting with this whiteness. We are cutting the throat of whiteness.
Shoot, kill, no one's the farmer, kill the brewer, the farmer.
The farmer, which is white, people and stuff.
So literally Donald Trump is playing this in front of the president, articulating in front of the world what he is talking about. Look, there's millions of people that look like they're at this event. Not millions, but there's hundreds of thousands that are at this event. And let me just put some context here, because some people may not be aware of this, but I did research on this a long time ago. What this African guy is saying is actually a song. He's singing to a song. And so people are saying that he's not really talking about actually doing this. This is like a chant song for the power, for the people, or then it's referring to something else. But don't you find it interesting that the same subject matter that's in this fight song is the same subject matter that they're complaining about? It's the same reality of some South African farmers who have been murdered and killed and their land taken? Don't you find it to be interesting that those two are consistent? So it doesn't matter that you claim that this was a chant, a fight song that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with actually doing, but look at the actions and behaviors. Look at what this gentleman has said in other interviews that clearly shows and articulates his intent to hate and demolish the white man. Now, I'm not a part of South African culture. I don't know if they justified in what they feel or not, but I will say this. If you are saying that a genocidal behavior isn't occurring when you have leaders like him, you are foolish. Let's finish the clip.
The thing is, I do know about the history, what the white people did to the black people. That was unforgivable. And how the slave trade, they do have a right to hate, to have that hate, from back then and stuff like that, and to have, certain land back, but I don't, like it where they're just killing, all the white people and stuff like that. I believe in some kind of reparations to those black people. Unlike here, because what has happened in South Africa to black people is more occurred throughout the decades than it is, say, here in the United States. What the white people again did to the black people in South Africa is unforgivable. Very unforgivable and stuff. But I don't like, and I'm not, for genocide. I don't like what's happening in the EU. I don't like what's happening in the UK, where they're allowing, murders and rapes and trafficking white children and other children for sex and stuff like that. With, Muslim migrants, they're going there, taking, white people's houses and stuff like that. An eye for an eye type thing, a revenge thing, a hate against white people and stuff and everything. Two wrongs do not make a right and stuff. Like I said, there's bad feelings for good reasons, but I don't like, the genocide thing. It's not right.
I'm saying to you, was not called for the killing of white people, at least for now. I can't ever see the future.
Yeah, but, I mean, do you understand somebody watching that, especially as it gets shared on Twitter, they freak out. It sounds like a genocidal.
I can't take it.
This is bad. Officer Tatum, a lot of people don't know what happened in South Africa. I know a lot about the history there and what the white people did. I believe there should be reparations. I don't believe in any side, no matter what color you are, in a genocide like this, unless it's a very hateful type of people, you know, a very terrible kind of people. That's different. But this is where two wrongs, you know, do not make a right and everything. I've seen a lot what has happened in South Africa over the decades and stuff like that, and things are getting more peaceful. And you have to totally kill, destroy extremism of any kind. You know, you have to totally destroy it. And you have to attack it and everything, no matter where it's coming from.
Who will expropriate land without compensation, whether they like it or not. If they object, they can seek refugee in America.
Now this is very bad. These are burial sites right here. Burial sites. Over 1,000 of white farmers, and those cars are lined up to pay love on a Sunday morning. Each one of those white things you see is a cross, and there's approximately 1,000 of them. They're all white farmers, the family of white farmers. And those cars aren't driving, they're stopped there to pay respects to their family member who was killed. And it's a terrible sight. I've never seen anything like it. Both sides of the road you have crosses.
Now, can we speak very candidly? And I'm gonna show you the left getting on and having a meltdown over this very thing and acting like this didn't happen. Can we just say this for once and for all? White lives matter too. I do not understand how people can live a life and not understand that we all matter equally. It's not just black, it's white people too. So that means when there's an injustice against white people, it's wrong. When there's an injustice against black people, it's wrong. I don't care what somebody did 1,000 years ago, 100 years ago, 50, 60 years ago. When a person is treated unfairly, no matter what the circumstance is, it's wrong. I don't care that white people used to own slaves. So did black people. Y'all don't want to have that conversation. Black people own slaves too. Hundreds of them own hundreds of black slaves. The first legal slave owner was a black man. Yeah, they literally lied to us about, and they were not authentic about what was actually happening during slavery. I took Africana studies in college. That's the only way that I learned anything reasonable about what happened. And I had to learn things after college, like the fact that Harriet Tubman was married. Her husband was a free black man, and they lived together. She had a job. She would go to work and come back. She wasn't who, and I'm not saying that diminishes what she did, but she wasn't who people think she was. You have to ask yourself, how was it the way y'all say it was when she could live with a free black man that lived in the house with her and she was still a slave? That tells you that she wasn't in the field getting whacked over the head all day long, get whooped on the back. There was something else going on. The fact that a man who's black could go to court and sue to retain custody of two people for life in the 1600s, that something else was going on. The fact that you had most of the free blacks still lived in the South, where slavery was legal. Most black people still lived in the South. Anyway, I don't want to go through this.
I mean, this is the thing. Yeah, there's stupid crap too because.
Let's watch the clip. Roll it.
This is the thing. No matter what color you are, everybody deserves to be respected until disrespecting is done. And everything. You know, respect everybody as long as they respect you. And they don't force their ideologies, you know, religious stuff or whatever on you and stuff like that. Then, you know, color should, you know, matter or anything. All people should be, you know, respected and stuff like that. Unless they're forcing bad things on you or whatever. But, you know, that's just the way it should be.
Brought his best diplomatic self to this meeting, but nothing could have prepared him for this multimedia ambush that President Trump laid out with video, with printed out news stories, This was a laundry list of debunked. This was a laundry list of debunked conspiracy theories. Some South Africans are telling me this is AfriForum propaganda. AfriForum is a white Afrikaner lobby group that's considered a white nationalist organization by the Southern Poverty Law Center. Everything, almost everything that President Trump said in the Oval Office is not true, was inaccurate, has been repeatedly debunked.
Hold on, right there. If that is true, then the president of South Africa would have a field day ripping Donald Trump to shreds here.
Whether you call it a genocide or not, the facts are white farmers in South Africa have been murdered. A lot of people have tried to cover this up. A lot of people in, I think, media in the United States have tried to cover it up. Obviously, the South African government doesn't want to talk about it, so it was kind of a boss move for Donald Trump to roll.
Well, also, you have to take into account that they're also trying to cover it up what's happening in the UK and the European Union as well. And, you know, what's happening in Australia, New Zealand, stuff like that, how, you know, Islamic extremism has totally destroyed these countries and is coming over here. A lot of that's just infecting the countries like a virus and attacking white people and stuff like that. And you just want this, the black people just want to see as victims no matter what. They just want to be seen. I'm multi-race and stuff like that. I got Asian, I got some tribal and stuff like that, and everything. But bullshit has to be called out. And I didn't call racism out. There's stuff like it does. I'm sick of these idiots saying, you know, that they're the victims. Also, is total 180. It doesn't matter what race you are, you know, you're supposed to respect other people, no matter of, you know, race, color, stuff like that. Again, as long as they don't try to force their ideologies, religions and stuff on you and stuff like that, you know. We're supposed to be able to live the way that we want without people coming over and trampling on our own rights, etc.
Roll that television in there today, and I think even the agriculture minister in the Oval Office confirmed that these people are, in fact, being murdered. So my question is, if it's not a genocide today, how many do we want to let get murdered so that people around here can be satisfied? Okay, now it's a genocide. Let's let a few more. I don't understand. Right. We're talking about 50-something people they were trying to let in, and everybody's losing their mind after we let in 20 million illegal immigrants over the last several years. The president is trying to prevent genocide from happening any further to these people. They are clearly being discriminated against. Some have been murdered. This was an interesting spectacle in the Oval Office today, but it had to happen because I don't think anybody was telling the truth about it.
There's no way whatsoever on planet Earth you are the president of a nation. I think he's the president, right? You are the South African president. You're a president of a nation, and you're not aware of this propaganda.
Oh,
like, I don't understand it. That's like if Donald Trump goes somewhere and they go, you said there's good people on both sides, and there's a genocide of black people in America. Cops kill 40 million black people a year. Donald Trump will be able to say, hold my tanning lotion. Here's the fact, here's the fact, here's the fact, here's the fact. You guys are completely wrong. Now, I would love to have an honest conversation, but let's talk honestly. This is what I'm doing to combat the things that you're articulating. If it's so widely debunked, the president should be aware of it. Roll the clip. Or we got the other clip. Is there another one? All right, roll the clip.
I grew up in an area in South Africa.
Hold on. Let's put it in context. These are two people who are golfers from South Africa, because golfing is big in South Africa. At least that's what Nick told me. So if he's wrong, it's Nick's fault. So these are two golfers that came, and the president brought them,
Nick's fault,
I guess, to be accompany him, I'm assuming, as witnesses, or who could advocate that the race relations in South Africa is not as bad as one would think. So he should have been prepared for anything because he brought advocates. But this is what the advocate said. Roll the clip.
Farmland area, Polokwane.
Yeah.
And there is some issues up there. Obviously, my dad was a property developer as well as a part-time farmer. And yeah, some of these buddy farmers got killed. The farm is still going. My brothers run it. But it's a constant battle with farms they're trying to burn the farms down to chase you away. So it is a concern to try and make a living as a farmer, and at the end they, without farmers, there's no food on the plate. So we need the farmers
Your
to
brother
produce
loves
the food.
farming, right? He wouldn't do it. He wouldn't even want to do what you're doing, right? They love farming. They don't want to leave. But it's a struggle.
Yeah, and food and fresh water is the most important thing in life. Without those two things, you can't survive.
This is the thing. If it was a lie, this guy would be all over the place. He'd probably be cussing the president out. He'd be all about on his BS. He'd be pissed. The South African president would be pissed. He'd be yelling and screaming at Trump, calling BS. He would sit there just letting this happen. It doesn't matter if he's in the White House of the most powerful country in the world. It doesn't matter. If someone lies about you, you're going to be pissed off. You're going to go off on everybody. He ain't doing that.
How is the water there?
The water's great, obviously. All the water comes out of the borehole, out of ground for us down there. But yeah, it is a battle to get the water out sometimes when all the equipment gets stolen all the time that you're trying to get the
So
water
does
out.
your family and your brother, do they feel safe on the farm?
They live behind electric fences, try and be at night safe. But it is constant whenever you leave that something could happen. And
There's nowhere to live.
both of them has been attacked in their houses. My mom's been attacked in her house when she was 80. So it is difficult.
Man, the president looked miserable. Not Trump, but the other guy from South Africa. I don't know if he just wasn't expecting the guy to say what he said, or
he wasn't.
He just looking like, oh crap, I'm just getting exposed, and I ain't even prepared to say anything. I thought I was gonna come here and it was gonna be happy-go-lucky. But what I will say is this: let's just always be honest and transparent. It's very simple. Is there an issue? Yes. Should we address the issue? Yes. No matter if it's black, white, or indifferent. If people are claiming there's an injustice that had occurred, the reason why 80% of the farms are owned by white people instead of black people who are majority, I believe, if we want to have that conversation.
Yeah, I think we do, because the white people, and I believe there needs to be reclamation where a lot of them get their land back. I do. I actually do believe that, because they took it from them. And this wasn't all, also long ago. I don't know. Some of it is long ago, some of it isn't. I believe some of the black people should get it back, rightfully so. But killing and genocide is not the way to do it. That isn't the way to do it. Those that have suffered from the white people should get what's due back to them. This isn't like here it is in America, where nobody's been a slave and stuff like that, and none of their land has been taken, etc., etc., etc. It's different over in South Africa. It's a lot different over there, and how land was taken, etc. It's like how our tribal land, Indian tribal land was taken, and stuff like that. That's what it's like over there, where we took, tribal land and stuff like that. So it's quite a bit different. It's a conversation I believe that, we should all have, rightfully so they should have, and stuff like that. Or I should say they should have, as long as it's respectful, and stuff like that, and peaceably done. So, without killing. So
let's have that conversation. But there's a remedy to that, and the remedy is not killing white farmers.
Right.
Can we agree to this? It's the same thing that happens here on the home turf.
I think
it's like there are certain things that are reasonable for us to approach. If we feel like the justice system is not fair, which I think the justice system isn't fair generally, I think generally it works, but I think that there's unfairness in the criminal justice system. Do I think it's biased against blacks? No. I think it's biased against poor people. I think it's biased against people that don't have resources. People who are not educated.
I know.
That's who it's biased against. But it is what it is. Stay out of the justice system. You don't have to worry about being biased. But if there's improprieties there, let's work on them together as a nation, as a people. Let's work when we see white people get done wrong in the justice system. Let's work when we see black people get done wrong in the justice system. Don't be the type of person that's like, oh, I'm only worried about black people. Only when black people do that. No, wrong is wrong, my man. Wrong is wrong.
No matter what color.
Let's move
race,
on.
creed, and stuff. I want to get back over here because, what was it? This is where I want to get.
First slave owner in the colonies, Anthony.
This is from the Cartier family. Again, there's stuff that I do agree and do not agree with them on and stuff like that. It's just I want to get this stuff, do the reaction to these guys and stuff like that. Give them a shout out, the Cartier family here. Go leave them a like and a shout out and everything. I'll go over this.
Johnson, Forgotten History.
Y'all want to be messed up real quick? Y'all know he's black though, right?
With a name like
His
Anthony
first
Johnson.
slave owner
He's been saying
was
this
black.
for weeks now.
I messed up.
How did you find this video?
TikTok.
Wow.
And Officer Tatum.
OT.
So people are saying that the first slave owner in America
He actually pushed for it apparently.
was black.
Wow.
That sounds like some hidden history. to me,
Supposedly,
because
yeah.
I didn't even know there were black slave owners until we got on YouTube.
This is factual information.
This channel is pretty factual.
Can I have a
Forgotten
quick Google
history.
real quick?
Yes,
I don't have my phone. You don't have to fact check everything. That you do,
Anthony
bro.
Johnson.
Find that.
Anthony Johnson.
He's gonna pop up. I tried to do. I was messed up. Anthony Johnson.
Gotta give a shout out
Popped
to
up?
Anthony Johnson.
Yeah, multiple
Forgotten
times.
history. Yeah, I need.
Wow.
Yeah, that
Black
was
man,
one
bro.
place
He
I
got
got
the
some
beat.
stuff.
What did it look like? What did it look like?
Shit.
He
Let's
looks
get the
kind of
feet
like
up.
you.
Shut up.
Actually, bro, I'm gonna show
Both
y'all
of them
too.
was it.
This
Yeah.
shit's
We
crazy,
seen him. That's
Yeah.
Franklin Douglas over there. Though.
Frederick.
Frederick. I said
I
Franklin.
said Franklin.
bro. I'm gonna show you guys this too, but I'm gonna show these guys.
Every black person living should go to Ghana and see them slave castles so you can see what they did to us.
Slave castles?
You got to see what they did to us. You got to see how they built these dungeons underground and they put these churches on top and they dug holes in the ground to pump the music of what they call their Christianity into the holes.
That shit's crazy.
I definitely would like to go see that one day.
Yeah, man.
That would be powerful.
We can go.
Did every single continent
You
have
didn't see the slave
slavery?
houses?
You don't see Brock Cousins out
Yes,
there.
every single
Actually,
continent
literally, I
has.
just met one the other day.
has
You didn't see.
slavery.
You didn't see the slave houses in Thibodeau.
Nah, I've never been to Thibodeau.
It's
Oh, I
fucked
wasn't
up.
there. That shit was
Hey,
crazy.
just
the
it here.
While slavery existed in the American colonies through the establishment of the United States as a country until the end of the Civil War, there have been many misconceptions about slavery in
Just
general.
white people ended
Most
that.
Americans are not
White
aware
people ended that.
that there were some black former slaves and freemen who also owned black slaves. And some became very prominent in politics as well, despite the racial prejudice that existed. Some black slave owners inherited their slaves from their masters, who were themselves freed in their wills. Others were either born free or emancipated by their masters and then bought their own slaves, while others were able to buy their own freedom and that of their families. Who were these black slave owners, and how did they attain such a status in a white-dominated society? What set them apart from other blacks, and what made them comparable to whites
Boy,
in
he's
some of the
dressed
colonies
good.
and later states?
He's
What
dressed a lot
changed
better
in
than I am,
colonial
that's for
society, altering the status of indentured servants to lifetime slaves? And why? Who was Anthony
Boy,
Johnson?
Johnson.
Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former soldier, Marine Corps scout
Is that a
sniper,
nigger on that nag?
professor, historian, and book author.
That's from
And we will answer these
That's from
questions and
Django.
other.
Anthony Johnson.
The vast majority of African Americans in the United States were enslaved, in all of the states, not just the South. Our first person of note is Anthony Johnson, who was born in Angola and captured by Portuguese slave traders, and he was given the name Antonio. Then his captors sold him into the Atlantic slave trade. He sailed to Virginia in 1621 aboard the ship James. The Virginia muster, or census, of 1624 lists his name as Antonio, not given, and he was recorded as a Negro in the notes column and indentured. Antonio, later Anthony, was bought by a colonist in Virginia, but treated as an indentured servant, which was not unusual, and Antonio worked for a merchant at the Virginia Company, and he became a Catholic. Johnson was sold as an indentured servant to a white planter named Bennett to work on his Virginia tobacco farm. Technically, he was not a slave, because the slave laws were not passed until 1661 in Virginia, so prior to that date, Africans were not officially considered to be slaves in that colony. According to the records kept by his benefactor and the existing documents, Anthony was nearly killed in the Indian Massacre of 1622 when the Powhatan Indians attacked colonists in the Tidewater region of Virginia. On Good Friday, they raided the settlement, including the Bennett farm, where Antonio worked, and killed 52 of the 57 men present. Antonio apparently fought back and was wounded and earned the esteem of his master. In 1623, a black woman named Mary arrived aboard the ship Margaret and John. She was brought to work on the same plantation as Antonio, where she was the only woman present. Antonio and Mary married and lived together for more than 40 years. Around 1635, Antonio and Mary completed their indentured servitude, and Antonio changed his name to Anthony Johnson. He first entered the legal record as an unindentured free man when he purchased a calf in 1647. During this early period, free blacks enjoyed relative equality with whites, and about 20% of the free blacks in Virginia owned their own homes and property.
That's crazy.
This is crazy.
In 1662, the Virginia colony passed a law that children in the colony were born with the social status of their mother. This meant that the children of slave women were born into slavery, even if their fathers were free, European, Christian, and white. This was a reversal of English common law, which held that the children of English subjects took the status of their father. The Virginia colonial government expressed the opinion that since Africans were not Christians, common law could not and did not apply to them, even if they converted, as Anthony Johnson did. On July 24, 1651, Johnson acquired 250 acres of land under the existing headright system when he bought the contracts of 5 indentured servants, one being his son, Richard Johnson. Under the headright system, if a man were to bring indentured servants over to the colonies, and in this particular case Johnson brought 5 servants, he was owed 50 acres a head for servant. The land in question was located on the Great Naswata Creek, which flowed into the Punkateague River in Northampton County, Virginia. This was where Anthony Johnson operated his successful tobacco farm, and one of his indentured servants was John Cassor, who became one of the first men to be declared indentured for life, effectively a slave.
Dang.
Under the 1645 Virginia Taxation Act, all Negro men and women and all other men from the age of 16 to 60 shall be judged tithable. So after a fire in 1652 caused him great financial damage to his property, he applied for relief in the courts and won. Back then, people were taxed, not property, but indentured servants and later slaves were taxed as property. It is unclear from the records why the Johnson women were exempted, but the change gave them the same social standing as white women who were not taxed. In the colonies back then, one was judged more on their religion as opposed to race or ethnicity in general, so until the advent of actual legal slavery, upward mobility was possible for many races. During the case, the justices noted that Anthony and Mary Johnson had lived in Virginia for over 30 years and were highly respected in their community. In fact, a 1653 Northampton County Court document lists Mary as Anthony's wife. By the 1650s, Anthony and Mary Johnson were farming 250 acres in Northampton County, while their 2 sons owned 550 acres. They also had additional indentured persons under contract, but the exact numbers are not known. His son, Richard Johnson, also had his own indentured persons, probably given to him by his father, who were effectively slaves with a shelf life. At some point, if contracted, they would have to be set free. In 1854, John Cassor, who had been sentenced to indentured service for life for his escaping a previous owner in 1640, filed a suit against Johnson, claiming his indentured service had expired, and he went to work for Robert and George Parker. Johnson filed a freedom suit to get Cassor back, but Parker won. What is amazing in retrospect was that Johnson, a black man, was not only able to file a petition to the court, but he was able to testify and give evidence in the court, which illustrates the rather egalitarian system in place at that time. However, Johnson appealed to the County Court of Northampton County, Virginia, and the court reversed its ruling and sent Cassor back to Johnson in 1855, and Parker was forced to pay Johnson compensation.
How was he
Then
winning
Cassor
all
made
this shit?
history. as he was probably the first person who was declared slave for life in Virginia. That means that his black owner, Anthony Johnson, was probably the very first slave owner in all of the colonies, himself a black man. There were both black and white indentured servants, the whites being the most Irish of all, who, like the blacks, were also sentenced to lifetime servitude before Castor's case. The difference was that the whites could eventually purchase their freedom in most cases. Therefore, Anthony Johnson was apparently not only the first African American whose right to own a slave for life was recognized in the colonies, he was therefore technically the first actual legal slave owner, regardless of being black or white, as established by the Virginia court. Soon afterwards, slavery was...
This is another thing they don't teach in schools, that there is actually Irish slaves, Irish slavery that was going on in, England, UK, even in almost modern times, in 1800s, etc., and treated worse. In 1900s, in some places, Irish as well. Irish were taken as slaves because, the English hated the Irish because of revolts more than they hated the Scots over there. The Irish people were always a thorn in the British, side and stuff like that for creating revolts, and the Irish Republic Army, stuff like that. Irish people were greatly hated by the British, English, and stuff like that. And there's a lot of slavery with the Irish people that is never talked about in schools because only black people being slaves is permissible. In the schools that your children are being taught, even colleges and universities, that's what people are taught. That only black people are slaves, and that's not true.
Was legal in all of the colonies. Later, Johnson moved his family to Somerset County, Maryland, and leased 300 acres for tobacco farming for 99 years, which he called Torrey's Vineyards. When Anthony Johnson died in 1670, that August, his plantation was given to Robert Parker, not to Johnson's children. The justification delivered by an all-right jury ruled that Anthony's land in Virginia that was given to his sons could be seized because he was a Negro and by consequence an alien.
Wow.
As a result, the 50 acres that Anthony had given to his son Richard wound up in the hands of his wealthy white neighbor George Parker. It didn't matter that Richard, a free man, had lived on the land with his wife and children for 5 years. A judge then had ruled that Anthony Johnson, as he was not a citizen of the colony because he was black, but he did own his own slaves, could maintain his property. Wow. What soon arrived after Johnson's death was a system of legal slavery in which enslavement was lifelong, hereditary, and based solely on race, and effectively established in all of the colonies in the beginning of the 18th century. As a result, Johnson has been referred to historically as the Black Patriarch of the first community of Negro property owners in America. He was the first black slave owner to be involved in a court case that resulted in an indentured black man, John Castor, to be legally determined as a slave for life.
It's messed up, man.
In effect, because hereditary slavery was not in effect during his period of ownership of Castor, the slave for life and others he purchased, it is arguable that Anthony Johnson was in fact the first actual slave owner in the American colonies. And he was a black man.
I definitely am wondered how he treated them. If he had so many of them, you think he was treating them good? They were
how he treated them?
Yeah, how he treated his indentured servants.
Yeah,
I don't know.
He probably treated them like how his first master probably.
You're a slave. No matter what color you are, you're a slave. You'll be treated like a slave, pretty much. Slaves of any color are treated like animals and stuff. When the N-word was made by slavers, is that they meant to, they use that word as the worst of the worst. You're a piece of shit, you're below a dog, and stuff like that. That's what the N-word means. You're trash, there's this and that. Black people don't even know what the N-word means or anything like that. And that's why they should be using it themselves. But,
he was.
But
It's
like,
hard
did
to
they
really
ever
say.
mention in the video, was he treated bad? Like
No,
when
I think
the submission and
they
stuff?
said he was treated a little better with the dude who bought him in Virginia because he made him an indentured servant instead of a slave. That's why he eventually got his freedom.
But didn't they say like this was before slavery was a thing? Because
Yeah.
you know, indentured servants, he said, has a
Yeah.
shelf life, so that means like their servitude ends.
Yeah. So I think the way they made it seem like it was actually before slavery, it wasn't as racist. It was more, what religion are you?
Yeah, no.
And
I
that's
think
how they would discriminate.
I think they were like he had indentured servants, which was before slavery was established. Because after slavery was established and he died, they were saying like
Then they
because he was
started-
black,
yeah.
all the stuff that he accomplished, and
Yeah.
it was
They gave
it
to
was
the neighbor.
It was like it was over with because he was black, so
Yeah.
it doesn't mean anything.
So they
and
started
black
being
people
more
were
racist
less.
when he was dead.
Yeah, it started being more about race after he died. So everything he did didn't matter. That's crazy. That is actually insane.
Yeah, I seen a lot of messed up stuff in this video.
Yeah, it messed me
It's
up.
kind of like it just seemed like that was the way of life. Like that was the way of people
Yeah.
having power.
Societal norm.
I mean, yeah, it was a societal norm.
Yeah,
Now
that's the way
it's
it
totally
was
like
back
it's just
then.
messed up. But back then they might not have thought it was crazy at all. Like
They didn't.
Yeah, no,
That's
they said
crazy.
it was egalitarian when there was like indentured servitude, but once slavery started to become established and it was built off race, all the things that they did as a black man was like null and void, basically. Like it doesn't matter. Like, oh, he's black, he's not a real citizen of the colony, so his land and all the stuff he built is in.
Well, if you go to Rome, you go to Africa where blacks enslave other blacks. It's about domination and everything, having power, taking over territory. And in Africa, you know, where some of that still happens and stuff like that, where different native tribes in Africa are at war with each other all the time and stuff. That's what they've been doing for hundreds of years or even thousands of years. Old tribalism stuff. With Rome, it didn't matter if they were white or black. It's just that it was, you know, first part of the trade business, stuff like that. And of course, you're subhuman and stuff like that. So, I mean, today there's still slavery happening, even Eastern Europe and stuff like that. There's the sex slavery and stuff like that. That's going on today in Eastern Europe or you know, Russia, you know, China or whatever, different countries. Africa, it's still happening today. So
Irrelevant. The white people can come take it. That's crazy. That's basically what they said, is it not? Like,
Yeah.
So the people that had indentured service, they didn't call that legalized slavery. So
yes,
that's
you have
why,
a year period.
Because
they
the
would end.
servitude has like a time period, so you're gonna be an indentured servant for 10 years, but once the 10 years up,
Yeah.
you free.
So when
That's
he made that
basically-
one guy a full time,
He was the first
They,
one.
they said that was his punishment because he ran away from the people, and then he was like, "Well, I'm supposed to be free because I was working for him, so I'm not supposed to work for you." So he was like, "Nah."
see, but that's
let's
what
go to
makes me
court."
not want to give him a pass though, because it's like you still did something more messed up after. Because like back then, I could see like, okay, that was just the way of living. I could really be like, okay, there might not be bad people, but now that you know, when the guy ran away, oh, so he didn't make that punishment. Someone else made that
They
punishment.
went to court. You know,
Yeah,
he
he
was like,
probably
he was
went
like,
to court.
Yeah, he said he went to court and he brought
that's
evidence
fucked
and was
up.
like,
Oh,
"Look,
that's
this
fucked
is
up.
my servant." But the dude was like, "No, I'm supposed to be dude's servant." But the guy Anthony lost, and they was like, "Yeah, you do belong to the man that he says he belonged to, but since you ran away, your punishment is you a servant for life now."
the
And
first slave.
So technically, he's the first slave for life. Like now, you a servant for life since you ran away. Isn't that what they said happened?
Yeah, I think.
And then
But
I
think
think
about
Parker
that.
had to pay them too.
But they said that like it's crazy that like as a black man he was able to go to court and like present
Fight.
his evidence and
Yeah.
like fight like for what.
Yeah, that is.
That's crazy because like once slavery came along, black people wasn't even allowed to do that.
They
like,
they didn't even let his son go to court
Yeah,
for
they
his
were.
dad's
Yeah.
property.
yeah, facts. The property that he bought and built, they said since his son is black and was bought by a black man, the white people can take it. Black people not worth equal to us. That's crazy how they just like switched up and put that into place.
But-
But I guess that's how they like
Somebody
maintain
wanna
the
eat.
power.
Back then,
That's how they maintain
also
the
a lot of
power.
stuff wasn't built. So I can see if you don't have a lot of people working on something, you not having no motion. Think about like
yeah, that is.
Black people not worth equal.
hold on. Get this shit out here. Let me see. So black Africans sold other black Africans as slaves all over the world and in America. Free blacks owned over 10,000 black slaves. That's a lot. That's a fucking lot. Black people and black slaves, holy shit. With that, I wish that more people would see that, but
with us. That's crazy how they just like switched up and put that into place. But I guess that's how they like maintain the power.
Back then, also a lot of stuff wasn't built. So I can see if you don't have a lot of people working on something, you're not having no motion. Think about like up north, up north it's cold as hell. So when people came to Jamestown and they landed up there, it was cold as hell. So you need some people to work fast so y'all can get some shelter. Imagine us just going, trying to build some shit. That might take a little second.
Yeah.
So you need some people.
Workers. Yeah, ain't no machine.
Jamestown's in Virginia?
Yeah.
That's the South, huh?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like the southeast,
Jamestown-
really, because they on the eastern time zone.
It was just in. I think Virginia was just in the 13 colonies, but Jamestown, I don't know where Jamestown.
But they still get cold in the winter.
Really?
Yeah, no, it gets cold up there. They get snow.
Imagine
What
you
state is
outside.
Jamestown? I thought Jamestown was in Virginia. I thought.
It is, yeah, but Virginia gets snow. It gets cold.
Yeah, I'm saying
Gettysburg.
So yeah, that was a way of just having motion. I guess that is crazy.
Yeah, no,
That's a way to think about
it's
it.
crazy how like they like just made it like since there were so many black slaves, they were like to keep the power over them. They're not equal to us, and they're not citizens. They're property. So like even though bro was free, like the laws applied to him, even though he was free and did all them good things.
Well,
it was like
for you people out there that think the world is
crazy.
getting worse, this shit just changed my mind.
They just
You be
took
thinking
his
like,
part.
oh, God's coming. This shit's
But we
getting
need to
worse.
read the book. We need to read the book.
That
Y'all need to
is
read
terrible.
the book Kindred, bro. It's about all this. It's like one of the best books I ever read.
it's called what?
Kindred. K-I-N.
that again, so black Africans sold other black Africans as slaves all over the world and in America. Free blacks owned over 10,000 black slaves. Why do we ever, not hear about that? I mean, it's just bullshit how kids in these generations have been given false misinformation, disinformation, and created this racism and hate against white people when all people have been enslaved and stuff like that. It does piss me off because it is orchestrated by a certain political side to put this stuff out that only white people have, committed slavery and stuff like that. That's just bullshit and everything.
Kindred.
Yeah.
Okay.
We read it in school.
I don't know
read
how
it
I
in
can
2
get no
days
worse
in
than
the
that.
edge.
What school you read?
At UL.
Oh, for real?
Mm-hmm.
What class that was?
I can't remember. It was my undergrad.
I think people need to be making laws
Again,
and
this
then
is-
they see one or
people
two
need to look
words
at
and try
this.
to like screw
We
it
need
so
to
it
look
can
at
benefit
this
them.
stuff right
That's
here.
pretty much what a lot of people have been doing.
What you mean?
Johnson owned his son. Remember? So his son
I
was
was messed up
considered.
about that for a second.
So his son is considered property. So they was like, and then he was married under his wife. So his wife was like, anybody that's under your mother is considered what she is. You know what I'm saying? So,
Oh, yeah.
So like,
So he was property.
Yeah,
That's
so-
probably why they took
They
his
say he was
land.
an indentured. He was indentured. The son was indentured because his son later owned slaves too.
That's pretty crazy how they said he has so many acres though, like 550 acres.
That's a
I mean, he was
Y'all just
trapping.
messed up.
Yeah,
How did he
565,
went
I
from a
think.
slave?
Then they said he moved on from his 300
Having
acres to go
slaves.
having another
That's a
330
long
acres
You
of
know what?
tobacco farming. That's insane.
You know
That's
what
a lot
probably
of
happened?
land.
He probably
Fucking
like,
crazy.
I'm probably tripping, but
I hate
he's
that.
turning
That's
some of
all
the black
right,
people
slaves.
when they got free, they would just keep getting so much land and just kept getting land. People like, oh, hold on, it's becoming a problem.
Well, I don't think that's
That's
what it
when the
was. They
slavery
said,
came.
slavery came, and then they made it where, like, in order to, I bet, this is probably how I'm interpreting it. In order to keep the power over the slaves, black people, since there were so many black slaves, they're not equal, they're not citizens, and they're property. So since they're black, they fall under that. So when he died, they said, since he's a black man, he's legally not a right, he's not a citizen, so, like, his property is free game. That's why it didn't go to his son. And then it was like, since his son is black, he can't own property, and it went to his wealthy white neighbor, which is why they seized all the stuff he built.
Yeah,
So
nah,
that happened in
this makes me have a
1670 when
different
slavery became a
perspective.
thing with black people. Isn't that what they said?
Because like the way we talk, like every slave owner was like, I hate you, rah. But it probably was actually some good ass slave owners And it's just that was just the way they had motion.
Yeah, no,
like,
I
you
think,
know,
I think the history of
Bad
slavery.
apples and good apples. In
I think
there.
the history of slavery. I'm not gonna say bad apples and good apples. I mean, it's like really a dark history, but it's
But
a lot
it's a
of
societal norm.
I want
That's
motion.
the way of business.
I really want motion.
It was the way
but
of
I'm a good
business, but
person.
the way slaveries were like beaten to submission and all the bad things that
Yeah, that
happened
was
out of
horrible.
slavery.
No,
Like,
no,
it's
see,
really
but that could have been just the bad apples.
How do we know how many bad apples and good
And we
apples?
don't know.
It
We
could
don't
have
know.
been
I don't.
99% bad
Most of the
apples.
time, okay.
But-
This,
don't know.
this is why I say that, because most of the time,
You gotta be bad just for having a slave, just for having a slave. I mean, I couldn't imagine. I would never want a slave even if it was legal. I wouldn't. Even people joke about that, slave or whatever. They'll just joke that, you know, if people had that option to own a slave, that's just ridiculous. I would never want somebody to be a slave to me. You know, I'm not smarter than all these other people, and I got a lot of self-hate. There's a lot of stuff that I don't like about myself, and it's like, what's to keep me from being a slave to somebody and everything? That's just me. I was gonna do that, but I think I'll go here. Let's see, the truth about white slave trade reaction. I just want to do this. You know, there isn't really much watching, but I feel I have to do this. I do. Let me see here. What's here?
when I hear about the history of slavery, I don't ever hear about the good, like
no, you
the
never heard
good
about
slave owners. I've never heard a good story about a good slave owner. Maybe he was the first good.
Okay, that's do that. Let's go here. This is from Sarah Dingler. Her first time ever hearing about the truth about white slave trade. And the thing is that it happened before this time, before the guy that reported this stuff, which was, what, the 1600s? I do believe that the reason why whites went after blacks in Africa is because Africans were coming after people in the UK and, you know, many parts of Europe as well. I believe that there's revenge type stuff happening that's, you know, not being reported, stuff like that. I remember hearing about this stuff when I was in, I believe, grade school, about, you know, white slave trade and stuff, and mysteriously they took it out. Those sons of bitches took it out and said we can't have that, you know, only black people are slaves and stuff. So
today's video,
get her a shout out. Sarah Dingler here. I left a like and everything. Give me a comment, whoever's watching, leave a like and tell me what you think.
going to be learning more about slave trade, but this time it's the white slave trade from forgotten history. Without further ado,
Slave trade.
let's get to it.
She has an accent.
10th Legion.
Slavery is as old as human civilization, dating back beyond recorded history, and it exists even still today. Every culture on every continent practiced some form of slavery, whether it was serfdom, indentured servitude, or collective peasantry.
Indentured servitude.
However, when the slave trade is mentioned, people normally think of the black African slave trade
Why
of
does
the
that
Western
happen?
Hemisphere. During the colonial period, from 1500 to the mid-1800s, as practiced by the European colonial powers. Estimates range from 10 to 13 million Africans being brought to the New World, with around 10 million surviving to be sold in North and South America, as well as in the Caribbean islands. Of this number, the best estimate is that 450,000 went to the British, French, and Spanish colonies in what is now the United States and Caribbean. Brazil alone received almost 5 million, the rest going to the Spanish colonies in South America. Slavery still exists in the world, yet most of the major powers ignore the fact and refuse to even acknowledge that it still exists. It is still quite active. Yet,
It's
6
still
decades
Africa,
before the
you saw
American
that.
Civil War,
You
quite
saw
active.
that. You see that?
Yet, 6 decades powers ignore the fact.
That crap ticker off the lid. As you see, still Africa. You're still happy in these places in Russia and stuff like that. It's not relegated to just Africa and stuff. And you got blacks enslaving other blacks and stuff. You have stuff happening in Iran. You have stuff in Persia, Arabia. China, you have stuff happening with the Russian slave native tribal people there and stuff, and you got slavery of other kinds in Europe and stuff. So,
And refuse to even acknowledge that it still exists. It is still quite active. Yet, 6 decades before the American Civil War, a war was fought by the United States on foreign shores to try and stop the white slave trade. What was the white slave trade? Does it still exist? Who were the Barbary pirates? What was the result of American intervention? How did it occur, and what was the aftermath? And how did 9 U.S. Marines and their mercenaries make history and give birth to a legendary fighting force while also ending the white slave trade in North Africa?
Hello, I'm Colin Heaton, former
In
soldier,
North
Marine Corps scout sniper, history professor, historian, and book author. And we will answer these questions and other issues on this segment of Forgotten History.
Dramatic effect.
White slave trade.
During the late 18th and early 19th centuries, the world was on fire as France and Britain were engaged in the Napoleonic Wars, which was another series of conflicts just like the 7 Years' War, again involving every nation in Europe. The 7 Years' War was also known as the French and Indian War in the United States. Both these conflicts were fought on every continent and on every ocean and in every colony. Even during these protracted wars, the transatlantic slave trade continued. It was big business. While the European powers were destroying each other, Thomas Jefferson became the 3rd President of the United States from March 4th, 1801 to March 4th, 1809. And he had several major issues to contend with. The Louisiana Purchase of 1803 from France doubled the size of the United States. The Yazoo territorial disputes in western Georgia were hotly contested. The launching of the Lewis and Clark expedition in 1804 to explore the newly acquired country, and the contested issue of slavery. In 1806, Jefferson denounced the international slave trade as a violation of human rights and called upon Congress to criminalize it. Congress responded by approving the act prohibiting importation of slaves the following year. No longer could slaves be brought from Africa, although slavery was still legal.
Okay, quick question. This happened around 1808?
18, yeah.
Thereabouts. I'm not
1806,
sure
yeah.
when, England started the crusade against slavery. I'm just trying to understand who made the first attempt, the first efforts, because I'm aware that Britain abolished, slave trade in Africa. I'm just not sure if that was before this or this was before that. But anyway, let's go back to it.
In the United States. Then there were also the rising tensions between the United States and Great Britain, which dominated the final years of Jefferson's second term, as the Royal Navy had been seizing American merchant ships and impressing sailors. However, one situation which has gone largely unnoticed in history was Jefferson being the first president to send the military overseas into direct action. The war against the Barbary pirates. For decades prior to Jefferson's accession to office, the Barbary Coast pirates of North Africa had been capturing foreign merchant and warships, stealing their valuable cargoes and enslaving crew members, while often demanding huge ransoms for their release. Many of these ships and crews were American. Before independence, American merchant ships were protected from the Barbary pirates by the naval and diplomatic influence of Great Britain, which had threatened the use of military force should their ships be molested. However, that American protection came to an end after the colonies won their independence. The Barbary
Yep.
pirates also
Sure
attacked
did.
the coastal northern Mediterranean, launching attacks against France, Italy, and Sicily, kidnapping women as white slaves, primarily and whenever possible, notable wealthy persons and ships for ransom. In their feverish search,
I mean, one thing is, this was happening even before, like I said, probably 1500s, not just, or 1600s. Stuff was happening along the coast of the UK. I saw that on the History Channel and stuff. So there's other stuff that predate the 1800s and stuff. So it goes a lot further back with the white slave trade. And like I said, I believe that there's revenge, where the whites did it went after people in Africa because how the whites were enslaved and stuff. It's like a never-ending BS type of thing. So
for white women slaves, a few pirates even went as far as the coast of Iceland, raiding inland to kidnap women and bring them back to North Africa. North African slave markets thrived, as, under Islamic law, known as Sharia, although fellow Muslims
that
could
shit
not be
needs to go.
enslaved,
I hate that.
non-Muslims could be
Fucking
and
rules.
were. Over a period of more than 300
Hate
years, it is estimated that 1 million white Europeans, to include those captured at sea as well as through land raids abroad, were enslaved.
Wait. What?
Yep.
Hold on. I think I missed that point. So, they captured white women and men and brought them to Africa to become slaves. There was not a point where I knew that. This is news to me. Wow. Okay.
Well, like I said, during the 1600s around there, before whites decided to go into Africa, they raided the coastline of Britain and stuff like that, Britannia and other parts, whether it be Italia, Italy, or whatever, Mediterranean, etc. And just take women and stuff. They just go up along the coast and take them and stuff, or women or children or whatever. It was a problem. So
Hey?
that's
I
before
honestly
this
did not
took
know
place.
that. How come this has not been taught in school again? Oh my god, there's so much I do not know. There's so much we do not know. And how far can people, and how far can they go to cover the truth? Wow.
Many of these were Americans captured at sea. In 1794, in reaction to the attacks, Congress had passed a law authorizing the payment of tribute to the Barbary states.
Like I said, they'd come through the Mediterranean. They'd go along the coast, of whether it be Italia, Italy, France, Spain, etc., or other places. They'd go up north to, and this is like 1600s, they'd go up around into United Kingdom, England, stuff like that, and raid the coast, whether, I heard, I believe it was in Scotland, maybe Ireland as well. I forgot exactly, but it is a bad problem and stuff, and I wish that he had a report on that. He may have it somewhere, but I've never seen it on the History Channel.
Part of that law was the Naval Act of 1794, which authorized the construction of 6 frigates, establishing the United States Navy. By the end of the 1700s, when Jefferson was Secretary of State, the United States had concluded treaties with all of the Barbary states, the Ottoman regencies of Algiers, Tunis, and Tripoli, along with independent Morocco. When Congress authorized $80,000 for Morocco to not molest American shipping, it was considered a good deal, as it was a cost savings when compared to the loss of ships, cargo, and sailors. The Bey of Algiers, Mustafa Baba, also agreed, and many American merchantmen were escorted by Portuguese warships, as Portugal also had a treaty with the Islamic states. But Jefferson was opposed to paying tribute, which he considered to be a modern Danegeld. When Saxon England paid the Danish Vikings not to attack, it did not work. Although Morocco and Algiers initially agreed, Just weeks before Jefferson took office, Tripoli began attacking American merchant ships in an attempt to extract further tribute. Jefferson had seen enough. Jefferson tried diplomacy, and his letter to Pasha Yusuf Karamanli emphasized, "Our sincere desire to cultivate peace and commerce with your subjects." Pasha Karamanli, the ruler of modern-day Tunisia, felt that the Americans had insulted him by not offering to pay tribute. He threatened continued actions if not so respected. Pasha Karamanli was already at war with Sweden, having broken an existing treaty after Sweden agreed to pay annual tribute and ransom for 131 captives. 14 Swedish merchantmen had been seized by Tripolitan corsairs. Some of these were white women who were being transported on Swedish merchantmen, and it is not known if they were ever recovered, as the white women were rarely ransomed. They were highly prized and sold. The Pasha then declared war on the United States on May 14, 1801 by chopping down the flagpole at the American consulate in Tripoli, a direct act of war. Jefferson sent 3 frigates and a schooner under the command of U.S. Navy Commodore Richard Dale as a show of force and to protect U.S. ships entering the Mediterranean through the Straits of Gibraltar. Dale learned of the declaration when he reached Gibraltar on July 1st, 1801. From that point, Dale's ships blocked 2 of the Pasha's corsairs operating as raiders and messengers inside the harbor. Yusuf Karamanli was shocked at the American audacity. The Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, Selim III in Istanbul, was also less than amused, yet did not interfere when the Americans became involved. He had just concluded treaties with Russia and Austria and was trying to westernize his empire along Western lines. This included eliminating the white slave trade, and this position was not favored by many of his subordinate regional leaders, especially in North Africa, and they launched a revolt against him, and his cousin and successor, Mustafa IV, had him murdered in 1807. He was not about to give up such a lucrative business. The U.S. blockades halted Barbary trade and raids with Europe, but did not stop Tripoli's trade with the other Barbary states. It did, however, incite the other rulers, who considered siding with the Pasha, and they expelled their American diplomats. The United States was putting a major dent into their pirate enterprises, to include the white slave trade. The possibility of Tunis, Algiers, and Morocco joining forces as a result of losing this lucrative business became a serious concern during 1802, but in 1803, Captain Edward Preble was the new American naval commander, and he was aware of the white slave trade and piracy, and he began to deal with it. On September 12, 1803, the USS Constitution arrived off the Barbary coast to confront the Tripolitan pirates. In October 1803, the frigate USS Philadelphia ran aground and was attacked and seized, and the 307-man crew was held for ransom. In response, on February 16, 1804, a group under Navy Lieutenant Stephen Decatur slipped into Tripoli harbor after dark, boarded and set fires that destroyed the Philadelphia. The Pasha, in response, demanded an outrageous sum in ransom for his American hostages, even threatening death if it was not paid. In 1804, Commodore Samuel Barron, aboard the USS President, took command of 11 vessels, and he had new orders. But due to illness, he handed command of the squadron to Captain John Rogers. Jefferson had again seen enough and decided to take direct and immediate action. He sent the order. Ex-Consul William Eaton, a former Army captain who used the title of General, and United States Marine Corps First Lieutenant Presley O'Bannon would lead a force of 8 U.S. Marines and 500 mercenaries to take Derna and free any hostages. These mercenaries were Greeks from Crete, Arabs, and Berbers, opposed to the regime, and started on a march across the desert from Alexandria, Egypt in April 1805. Their objective was to capture the Tripolitan city of Derna. The Muslim troops were under the command of Egyptian Sheikh El-Tahib, the Ottoman Empire viceroy. William Eaton, who was overbearing and not very friendly, kept himself aloof from his men and was in overall command but leading only half the group. He had a tough job controlling the largely undisciplined mercenaries, and the infighting between the Christian Greeks and Muslims, few of whom were professional soldiers, became a problem. His promises of money and loot once they took Derna was looked upon skeptically. However, O'Bannon and his 8 Marines embedded with their mercenaries shared food, hardship, water, and earned their trust. O'Bannon decided to take the Muslims from Eaton, exchanging them for his Greeks. The Marines built a strong fellowship by not denigrating the Islamic faith. They discussed their similarities and differences, O'Bannon also knew that many of these men had either been hostages themselves or had lost friends and family to the white slave trade. Eaton reported in May 1805, quote, "Our only provisions are a handful of rice and 2 biscuits a day," end quote. From March 22nd to March 30th, several Arab mercenaries under the command of Sheikh Hamid el-Tahib staged mutinies. By April 8, when he crossed the border into Libya and Tripoli, Eaton had quelled the Arab mutinies, but he could not stop the desertions.
What happened to the audio here? The audio go out. Let's see.
The guys walk.
Would lead a force of 8 U.S. Marines, and the Pasha, in response, demanded an outrageous sum in ransom for his Americans and messengers inside the harbor. Yusuf Karamanli was shocked at the American audacity. The Sultan of the Ottoman Empire, Selim III in Istanbul, was also less than amused, yet did not interfere when the Americans became involved. He had just concluded treaties with Russia and Austria and was trying to westernize his empire. On February 16, 1804, a group under Navy Lieutenant Stephen Decatur slipped into Tripoli harbor after dark, boarded and set fires that destroyed the Philadelphia. The Pasha, in response, demanded an outrageous sum in ransom for his American hostages, even threatening death if it was not paid. In 1804, Commodore Samuel Barron, aboard the USS President, took command of 11 vessels, and he had new orders. But due to illness, he handed command of the squadron to Captain John Rogers. Jefferson had again seen enough and decided to take direct and immediate action. He sent the order. Ex-Consul William Eaton, a former Army captain who used the title of general, and United States Marine Corps First Lieutenant Presley O'Bannon would lead a force of 8 U.S. Marines and 500 mercenaries to take Derna and free any hostages. These mercenaries were Greeks from Crete, Arabs, and Berbers, opposed to the regime, and started on a march across the desert from Alexandria, Egypt in April 1805. Their objective was to capture the Tripolitan city of Derna. The Muslim troops were under the command of Egyptian Sheikh el-Tahib, the Ottoman Empire viceroy. William Eaton, who was overbearing and not very friendly, kept himself aloof from his men and was in overall command but leading only half the group. He had a tough job controlling the largely undisciplined mercenaries, and the infighting between the Christian Greeks and Muslims, few of whom were professional soldiers, became a problem.
Okay.
His promises of money and loot once they took Derna was looked upon skeptically. However, O'Bannon and his 8 Marines embedded.
Let's see. Is it
a flag from the United States?
If I can get the audio here. Something happening with their audio, it's not mine.
Posture. And for the first time in American history, that a flag from the United States had been raised on foreign soil. Hostages were freed, and the Navy sank the pirate ships in harbor. Accurate naval fire from Argus and the other ships forced them back, and Derna remained in American hands. Yusuf reluctantly signed a peace treaty on June 10, 1805, aboard the USS Constitution. The treaty granted American ships passage through the Mediterranean without further payments of tribute and freedom from harassment. This also meant joining the other European nations in halting the very active and overt white slave trade. The war was over, and so was active white slavery from North Africa. Marine Corps legend has it that Hamid presented O'Bannon with a Mameluke sword, a sign of prestige and power. Emboldened by this event, more European nations also increased their naval presence and resisted the Barbary pirates, stopped paying tribute, crippling their commercial trade and extortion rackets, ending their raids on southern coastal Europe, ending hostage-taking, and their demand for ransoms and the white slave trade. Presley O'Bannon and his 8 Marines had done the seemingly impossible, but it would not be the last time Marines were called upon to do the impossible and succeed. Semper Fi.
We hope you enjoyed this segment of Forgotten History. please click like and subscribe for free. And please stay tuned and be engaged and informed. Send us comments if you have questions or even show ideas, and we will respond to all requests and comments as soon as we can. Thank you.
Oh boy. Wow. Oh, jeez. Jeez. Wow. Wow. What a story. What a story. This was really interesting and very, very new to me. I had no idea. I had absolutely no idea that white people were captured all the way from, America and brought to North Africa to become slaves. I had no idea. So, right now...
It's called repressed history, and history they don't want to have in our classrooms. Whether it's in America, Europe, European Union, or UK, they don't want that in there. This stuff happened before this stuff in this video happened. 1600s and stuff like that. And I believe that's the reason why whites went into Africa as a revenge thing. And everything. It's just, it needs to be taught in schools, or honestly, I think we just need to end it all. Probably. That we should just get rid of it. Or whatever. You can't have one side though. If you're going to have an education, you have to have the fact that all people have been a slave, in one way or another. Or fact is, we should just move on from it and stuff like that. Or just move on and get rid of the whole thing. It isn't about blacks being slaves. Everybody's been a slave. Every color's been a slave. Every nationality, one way or another, has been enslaved and stuff. It's just people need to move on, fuck away from it and everything. Or, Anyways, tell me what you guys think. Leave a comment, leave a like. Hope you all have a good morning, noon, night, wherever you are, and peace out.